And welcome back, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. I am a public relations professional and with a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And tonight we're going to have a culture talk. That's a show that doesn't get involved in politics. Even I need a break from politics, and maybe you do too. I have three guests on tonight who are very up to date on the Diddy trial. I know that at least three of us are big fans of the YouTube blogger Tisa Tells. In fact, I met one of our guests because of her appearance on the Tisa Tells YouTube podcast. Unless you've been living under a rock, you wouldn't know what a freak off was, or you wouldn't understand the joke about baby oil and lubricants. The subject matter is definitely for adults, so if you got any young kids hanging around, maybe you don't want them in the room with you. So let me bring our guests up to the stage. And my very first guest, hello, Dawn Daily Mac. Hello, good evening. Our very first guest we have is Braylon Lee.
Hello, everybody.
Braylon is a content creator originally from Little Rock, Arkansas, who now lives in Ohio and is a student at Kent State University. Braylon Lee's YouTube channel, and it's with his name, covers the media and human interest stories. He is an on-air personality for Code M magazine in Cleveland, Ohio, and he's just all around good guy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I graduated from Kent State in 2017, and Code M Radio was a great experience. I actually got to be one of my big dreams was to be on iHeartMedia. So that's on the iHeartMedia platform. So I got to do that at 26. So I've been very blessed, and yeah, life is good.
I need you to update your LinkedIn to say that you graduated from Kent State.
Yeah. I thought I did, but I'll take a look at
it. Yeah. And welcome to the show, Mr. Brandon Lee. All right. And next up is no stranger to the show. We have Latrice Davis. Latrice, she is the senior court clerk at Queens County Criminal Court. Say that 5 times, right? Latrice is active in her community and serves on the Queens Community Board 6. She currently serves on the Land Use Housing Landmarks Committee, the Transportation Street Safety Committee, and the Committee for Those Without Shelter, which she was named the chairperson of in April of 2022. Latrice participates in numerous events as a community board member on behalf of her constituents, and she is a former AP reporter, Associated Press reporter. Welcome back to the show, Latrice.
Well, go ahead.
As always, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
No problem.
Thank you for having me here. I look forward to the conversation.
Okay. And last but certainly not least, we have attorney Jonda Scott Adams. And Jonda's little dog is barking. Jonda.
I don't even like that thing. But anyway, go ahead.
Jonda has been practicing law for over 20 years. She has worked as a public defender in the Commonwealth of Virginia. She's worked in criminal law and domestic relations with an emphasis on juveniles. Jonda is currently practicing law in Northern Virginia with the Alvarez law firm. Jonda is also an author and a podcast host, and her podcast, I can't even talk today, and her podcast is called Let's Be Honest with Just Jonda, and that's been going on since 2020. Welcome back to the show, Jonda.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
What a night and what a topic.
yes, indeed.
But I've actually been looking forward to talking about this one, been following it, and actually have to do a whole update on it for my audience. I promise tomorrow to
Mhm.
cover the first 2 weeks. So I'm glad I get to do this with you tonight to get my whistle wet for a lot of catching up.
Okay. Okay. I was telling Braylon and excuse me, and Latrice earlier that I have a couple of videos that I might show little snippets of. They're really long, but I think they're kind of important. They kind of add a little flavor to our conversation. So we'll get going. Okay, so where do we start, guys? I'm going to ask this one question and I'm going to ask it of all of you to sort of get us going with our conversation. Braylon,
Yes.
where were you when you first heard that P. Diddy was in serious trouble and that there might be a case against him,
Ooh.
a federal case against him? Where were you and what was your initial reaction?
Where was I? I think I was at my place and
Mhm.
just laying in the bed, chilling, watching YouTube,
Uh-huh.
and saw a couple of articles, and my phone rung. And I'm like, okay, this is about to be interesting. So, to me, I feel like this, right?
Mhm.
Ever since 2020, the world has been a yo-yo. It's just been
Mhm.
up and it's just been falling, and nobody wants to pick up the yo-yo. And I feel like with Diddy, with everything that has come out, there's no way he gets out of this. I mean, regardless of if he's guilty or not, his life is not the same.
Mhm. Oh yeah. Absolutely not. Absolutely. Latrice, same question.
I was most likely at home just thumbing through my phone, and I saw the news alerts. And when I heard that the feds were involved and that this was a RICO case, I thought, he was able to dodge trouble with the shooting at the club when he was dating Jennifer Lopez. I'm not a conspiracy nut, but I definitely think Shine took the fall for him in that situation. And this was back in the 90s.
Shine
And
said that. He stated that.
then prior to that, when he organized the charity basketball event at City College, which ended up being a stampede, and he faced civil liability, he was able to dodge that. So I kind of felt like, okay, you've had 9 lives, used up your 9 lives, especially with the feds being involved. So that was my first thought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Jonda, our attorney, when was your first knowledge of this whole situation?
I was doing, I actually do remember I was doing what I tend to be doing. I was working in front of my computer, and throughout the day, I like to listen to pods or YouTube and the news, of course. So
Mhm.
flipping back and forth, and it pops up on my screen and it says Diddy indictment.
Mm.
And so I wasn't shocked
Mhm.
because, as we know, because all of us obviously clearly are, news heads. Um, I was not shocked because at that point, as we know, we were about roughly 10 months out
Mhm.
from the initial, well, not initial, because as we found out, there were lots of cases even before Cassie's that were settled, but from the explosions, shall we say, that the Cassie case caused, which was, as we know, in November of 2023. And then of course we had the spring of 2024 with the raid on the home. So for the indictment to then come in, what was that, September? I believe it was September of 2024. It made sense because it was the dominoes were falling. You
Mhm.
had a case that came up that was giving information. It was obvious that then other people were going to talk. Clearly, the raid, we know that where that came from. And let's not forget, I totally forgot the video, because the video and the raid came within about a month or so of each other as well. or maybe about a few months, because I was reporting on it at the time. So you had the Cassie case.
Which video are you speaking of?
The infamous
hotel video.
Hotel video.
Right, but I didn't. When did we see the hotel video?
We saw the hotel video before the raid. So the Cassie, we did. The Cassie lawsuit was in November.
Yeah, the lawsuit came first, and then the settlement, and then because the settlement was like the next day.
Yeah,
and then the video came out like in early 2024,
right after
and that was like a week or so before the raid.
Yeah, maybe a little bit longer, but you're absolutely right. There was still, it was within a short period of time. The dominoes were falling. So I say all that to say that it was not shocking that an indictment came. And I mean, and when even if you forget about Cassie in the video, the mere fact that there was a raid.
Yeah, that raid blew my mind.
Within 6 months getting an indictment. And then finally, I'd just say, coming from the perspective of a much younger person than me, which is my son, who is in his early 20s, when it happened, what he said to me encapsulated the whole thing, especially given that he's young and Diddy wasn't his generation. He said, well, Mom, most of us have known since we were young that Diddy was basically Darth Vader.
Really?
Yeah. And he's, at the time, he was just 24, and he said that him and his friends have known for years that Diddy was Darth Vader. Now, I knew that we knew that, but apparently they did too.
Well, I'm gonna just say that I guess I had on rose-colored glasses for longer than most. Okay. I thought I because I remember when Kim, what was Kim's last name? The twins, right? Tim, when Kim died, I was so mad at him. I was like, "Why didn't you marry her? You acting all upset and all this stuff." And at that time, I wasn't paying attention to him like that. Other than I loved his Ciroc commercials and all of that. His branding and stuff was on point. I'm just saying it from that lens of mine, that I thought it was par excellence. So I didn't think of him, or because I wasn't paying attention like that.
There was always an underbelly
when
it came to Diddy. Yeah. And I think some of it possibly depended on where you lived and your generation. Yeah. I'm the same age. Well, I think he might be a year older than me, but I'm roughly the same age as he. I'm also from the Northeast. I'm originally from Jersey. So of course, it being in that same age range and the artists in the same age range, and also being in that Northeast. So you hear stuff, right. People that you went to school with, know folks that know folks. And then, as Braylon pointed out with the other incidents, there was always stuff. There was always little stuff. It was stuff with the artists and the money. There was always some money mess with him. Like people would always end up disgruntled, and then they kind of disappear. I'm not saying whatever, but it'd be like blah 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 blah, and then gone. Like Mace, blah 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 blah, then gone. So just there was always an underbelly. The parties seemed a little seedy. It was him, as I consider, riding Biggie's corpse to stardom seemed always made me a little uncomfortable. There's just stuff with him.
And I'm glad you said that point, Jonda, because I'm close in age. I'm Puffy and I are 2 years apart. And going back to Biggie, there were always rumors that Biggie wanted out of Bad Boy. Mm-hmm. And that Diddy allegedly, I love that scroll at the bottom, allegedly, but that Biggie wanted out of Bad Boy and Diddy allegedly had him removed from the picture. Mm-hmm. And even before then, like I'm old enough to remember when Puffy was at Uptown Records. He used to work for Andre Harrell. He was the A&R person who was credited with discovering Mary J. Blige.
Absolutely.
So that's how far back my memories and stories of Puffy go. And even then.
Wait, let me ask you this. You said Puffy was he got the credit for discovering Mary J. Blige?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because he was A&R. So I mean, if you're the A&R guy, you're gonna get credit for who comes through the
Yeah.
door under you. And
He
Barry
was
was one of them.
he was the A&R guy for Uptown before moving on to create Bad Boy. Like a lot of people, like those of a certain age know that. But the thing is, like even then, there was always stories about, you know, how controlling and just, again, like the unsavory elements were there. They were always there. And you would always hear stories. Like I wasn't in that scene for obvious reasons, but again, like if you hear enough people say the same thing and they're consistent with their story, you just start to think, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And truth be told, it wasn't just Diddy. These at that time, the stories kind of went hand in hand with Biggie as well.
Yes.
Because at that point, Diddy was the executive / sidekick.
Correct.
So so it was again, it was always stuff. And you know, Biggie's not here anymore, but if we're gonna tell the truth, shame the devil, it was kind of it was that whole crew, so to speak. And the crew, basically the heads of the crew was them. And it was really Biggie, Diddy as the business person, sidekick, Braylon shaking his head. It was, I mean, if we're gonna tell it, let's tell it.
Nah.
I think a very crucial part that people tend to forget is that this is 2025, not 1994.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because there's a figure who should be free named Wendy Williams, that she was on Hot 97 WBLS, and she did what we're doing now. And
Hold
then
it
you got
all.
MTV, then you have 106 in Park, and you know, all we saw was TRL at 4-3 Central. All we saw was 106 in Park at 6-5 Central. So if you imagine the unaired footage, because even though it was live, sometimes they taped some of those segments. One of the curiosities I wonder about the case is if Paramount Global is going to be called to court, because there was a show on MTV called Making the Band.
I know where you're going with this.
On a good day, you would take 12 hours of reality TV. On a bad day, it would be 14.
Probably more than that.
The
Yes,
story.
and if you don't believe me, not saying y'all, but there was an article about the president and The Apprentice and how they have unaired footage of The Apprentice.
Oh, we know.
So, like I said, I don't know where you're going with this.
Yeah,
I'm loving every second of it. Keep talking, Braylon.
Keep talking, Braylon.
So yeah, so no, I usually come with the media angle on it, and from just the 9 days of the trial, I'm just like, you know, this has to be a guilty verdict. And a lot of people were saying, like, well, why would Cassie be at the beginning of the case? And I'm just like, y'all must not have forgotten about that lawsuit that was settled the next day. I was on YouTube, and I remember the day very specifically because it was me and Make It Make Sense sister on at the same time.
I enjoy.
I was covering the fact that the lawsuit was settled the next day, and not to mention too, the attorney Mark Garrigo, who oh, he's such a smart one, because he said that there wasn't thousands of bottles of baby oil, but yet the government has pictures of multiple bottles of baby oil. Mark Garrigo, in a public available documentary called "The Downfall of Diddy, the Indictment," that's available on Tubi rather, he said 1 bottle of baby oil goes a long way. Now, sir, if I was the prosecution, I would pull up that documentary in court and let you fall on your behind.
And let's face it,
because the judge is going to be like, how do you know that 1 bottle of baby oil goes a long way? And then you're going to have to turn your team and be like, you know, Harvey Levin asked for my opinion, but you didn't recognize that you were the lead attorney on the case. So go ahead, John.
Well, at that time, I don't think he was, but still, now you are, and now your words are out there. I'm with you.
Yeah.
So here's my thing,
and I love that you brought up Wendy Williams, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, Wendy knew her stuff, but you know, he also got her fired.
Absolutely, because Wendy was talking.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt that Diddy's power was, I mean, he ruled things with an iron fist. You couldn't make it if it weren't, if he put a black eye on you, that was it. You weren't going to make it at all. One of the things that's coming up in the trial that a lot of people are saying is, oh, it's just domestic violence. We don't see, that's not what he's being charged for. He's being charged for sex trafficking and RICO charges, and they don't see the connection.
I see the connection. It's bright as day. Not to cut you off, but if he and Cassie and these sex workers are traveling from state to state,
right?
When you cross state lines, that's automatically a federal matter. So whether it's by plane or Greyhound bus or Mega bus for that matter, once you cross state lines from New York to New Jersey or New York to Miami or New York to LA or wherever they were getting their freak offs on, now you got the feds, you catch the feds' attention. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Well, the other thing too is all of these drugs.
Well, yeah, exactly. Not just the sex trafficking, but the drugs. Like, one of the things I read in the articles is that he put everything on his black Amex card. So I mean, like, okay, if you're doing transactions that way, you don't think that's going to draw scrutiny? I mean, if we're talking credit cards, that means banks are involved.
Absolutely. And
so I mean, so like when I hear people say, "Oh, they don't see how it's a RICO case," I'm like, "Duh, the answer's right in front of you."
Okay.
Well, exactly. And with RICO, you need those predicate offenses, and they're proving predicate offenses. I think that, and that's part of the reason why I really was excited about doing this show tonight. Not just from the legal aspect, I could do that any day, but I love the idea of this as a cultural discussion, because I think that everything about this case is very revealing of the culture. And I know we're going to come to that in a second, but just speaking specifically to it as it relates to what you were just saying, Latrice, is we also have to remember from a cultural standpoint, and this is not just us, the culture at this point, but just generally, that we live in a very TikTok, Snapchat, 152, 172 characters per minute society. And so people want things fast. They want it easy. They want it wrapped up like something you see on television. They fancy themselves detectives because of true crime podcasts. And you know, being able to see their favorite YouTubers or whatever and all of that. But that's not, and those of you, this wonderful panel you have, we know that that's not really how it works. We know that that is not how a case gets done, not how a case gets laid out. There's several reasons why Cassie was first. One, it's salacious.
Yes.
So
and you get that out the way.
You grab the jury, so it's salacious. Two, from a practical matter, she is pregnant, and yes. You know, I know they say very pregnant, not pregnant, either pregnant or you're not, but in her case it applies. She's very pregnant, as in due any time now, so you don't want to potentially lose her as a witness and have a judge say, no, you can't use any of her prior statements because she was available when the trial started and you should have used her when you could. So that is the other part that lays some of the groundwork for some of the things that both Braylon and Latrice were talking about in terms of people moving people from place to place with the sex trafficking, the fact that there were drugs involved. We know that there were drugs involved, but she's someone who had firsthand knowledge of them. So then you want her. Now you bring in all the stuff that everybody else thinks is boring and they're going to tune out for, and then of course be sitting around pontificating about how the case wasn't proven. No, you all tuned out for the stuff that proves the case, because truthfully, the stuff that proves these types of cases is the boring part. It's not sexy. The stuff where you get into, I think it was Braylon that mentioned the monetary transactions, and Latrice did as well. That kind of stuff isn't so sexy. We got to get into receipts, and I don't mean receipts as in actual physical receipts. Like, You know, where was the black card used? What was it used for? Was it a business card? Was it someone related to the business? People like who are coming up, we know one for sure because the government has said that Capricorn
Clark.
Clark.
Clark, yes. Capricorn.
Yes, that Capricorn Clark is going to testify. I'm not sure if Andre Harrell is going to testify, but if he made a deal, he will. I think it depends on how good the deal is. But those are the people that will tie some of this stuff together. And that's not necessarily sexy, but you need it because that underscores the business enterprise. That underscores individuals who were doing things to move the RICO activity or the racketeering activity forward. And as we look at it from a cultural standpoint, that's the part that's not fun and sexy. So when that kind of stuff is being talked about, that's where people tune out and say, well, they didn't prove the case based on Cassie. Nobody ever said that the case was going to rise and fall on Cassie because you need all the other stuff to tie it together.
Right.
Now, Cassie helps with the sex trafficking for sure.
For sure. But
there's the other stuff.
We've got other people for the sex trafficking as well.
Hello, Mr. Punisher.
Yeah. Braylon, I was going to ask you a question because I think you might know it. Do you recall, Braylon, if anybody has said initially when all of the information was coming out, it came to a point where people were saying that baby oil had to be laced with something. That because he was insistent upon people getting it on them, and some of the early reports I heard was that when they got it on them, they felt like they felt funny, dizzy, woozy, and all that kind of stuff.
Well, we know they felt slippery.
That's sad but true. That's sad but true. It was said
somebody had to say it.
Listen, we gotta laugh. So, Braylon, did we ever hear for a fact?
I think it was said in testimony that was not the case.
That's
Cassie.
what I heard.
I think it was
Thursday.
Just baby oil for what it was. I think one of the biggest things that got to me was the Astroglide. I'm like, you mean to tell me that you this famous and you could get a brand deal from Astroglide? But then again, with this trial, it might come back to bite you. So I don't know if that brand deal with Astroglide would have worked out for him. But I'm just like, wow, okay. So
how slippery did you need to be? Yeah. Baby oil and Astroglide. And they said there was at the hotel, 30 bottles of Astroglide at the in the bathtub at the hotel when they picked him up.
Yeah, he wanted them to like bathe in it and all this weird. It just a lot of weirdness.
It's a lot of kinkiness. It was clearly one of his kinks. Like another thing I read that's coming out.
Not illegal.
No, it's not. But like another thing I have read is that he's really into like applesauce and ketchup. And I'm kind of like,
he had to have lots of applesauce.
He likes Heinz ketchup.
Yeah, exactly. He was very particular about the brand of ketchup as well. So I read about the applesauce and I read about the Heinz ketchup, and it's like, again, I mean, clearly, unless they're donating this stuff for free, so like, who's paying for all this? Where's the money coming from? I mean, one thing you know about RICO cases is that it's never a one-man operation. Nope. I mean, there's no way. And you hear all these people talking now, and it's confirming what I've always suspected. There's no way Diddy did all of this stuff without anybody knowing. Like people in his inner circle, people at the bottom of the totem pole, like the low-level employees, even they may not have known everything, but even they had to know, hey, we're getting like 50, 60 cases of baby oil. Like, what's that about? Like, so I mean, so that's where the RICO comes in.
And by
the way, Andre Harrell passed away in 2020, so he would not be called.
Oh yeah, that's right. Not him. The other guy. Why am I saying Andre Harrell? The other gentleman that got sued. There's another one that worked for him, second in command. Remember, there were two suits.
Yes, I do. And yeah, it would make sense that he would be called to testify because he clearly knows things. And if he's smart, he's going to cut a deal and try and get immunity. Whether or not they'll offer it to him is another story, but
I know we all know who I'm talking about. And I don't know why Andre Harrell came out of my face.
Is the youngest, Braylon. Who is it?
I cannot. I think it was. I think he might have went to the Met Gala one year. The assistant to Diddy. I think that's
Farnsworth Bentley.
He was like
Is that the name you were looking for? Farnsworth Bentley?
No,
Yes,
no,
I think-
not Farnsworth. No, I'm talking about somebody that worked for him in the corporation.
Oh,
Farnsworth
okay.
was way back.
in that case, I can't tell you. 'Cause
Yeah, it'll
that
come
was
to
the
me.
only other
I'll
person
look it
I
up. I'll in a bit. I'll go on mute and look it up so I'm not tapping and you don't hear it on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the other piece when we talk about, because I think again, when people want to just poo-poo this, oh, it's no big deal, it's just sex, it's just whatever, which is an issue with the culture. We getting there.
Yeah.
I think that for most people, now, yeah, we know that there's some people who a lot of us, that some of this stuff is made very uncomfortable. And for me, it's not so much the sex thing. I think for most of us, the issue that's uncomfortable is the violence.
Yes.
And the obvious coercion and whatever. If you live on the planet long enough, or now in the age of the internet, you ain't got to live on the planet very long at all to know that folks get their freak on.
Right.
The issue is when we get into a point where you're getting your freak on is violent or potentially causing individuals harm, or there's crimes involved, or even using videotaping people with or without
blackmail them. Potentially blackmail them, yeah.
Blackmailing. That is where a lot of this stuff comes in. And even with the RICO, I've heard a lot of people say, well, only one person is being charged. That happens all the time. Just because if you want to make your RICO case, and the feds make them a lot, as their track record in winning is what it is.
Yeah.
You get everybody else to flip.
Yep.
And you make deals with the other people, and they take lesser charges. So that may or may not land them in jail, or whatever the case may be. So you need people to help to show that the enterprise exists.
Correct.
And some of those people may or may not be charged based on their level of cooperation. So yes, you can very well have a situation where there is one person who is being charged, because that's the main person that you want to bring down. Right. Everybody else are just the ones that help you bring that. I always say RICO is like a triangle that helps to bring that piece together. Mm-hmm. The other two pieces at the bottom of the triangle don't have to be charged as long as you get the head. And if you look at the R. Kelly situation, you didn't have an army of people that were a part of that case and 57 co-defendants. It was R. Kelly. And then it was clear to most of us that some of those other people that they used were clearly charged or would have been charged if they didn't testify. And that's what I think is happening here. There's deals being made.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
We're going to see testify from this point out.
Braylon, I want to ask you, as the only gentleman on this panel, I am very curious as to your other male friends that you may talk to, that you hear scuttlebutt from about this trial. Hip hop has been to me, is filled with misogyny. Okay. It is what it is. And I just wondered if, hearing all of the horrific details and stuff of what Cassie went through and whatnot, if you're hearing it of any of your male friends are having different ideas about domestic violence or any of these things, are they beginning to understand, wrong is wrong and there's no areas of gray and that type of thing?
Well, let me say this first of all. I think that we have to recognize that we can't paint the whole genre with a brush. Because there's a brother named LL Cool J who has his own company called Rock the Bells that has been doing excellent. You got Ice Cube, you got Run DMC with Run's House. So I think that this trial has woken up hip hop
Mm-hmm.
in more ways than one when it comes to my male friends.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's allowed us to maybe see it from a vantage point that we
Mm-hmm.
haven't been able to before because we only know what we know.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my male friends, they come from the village I come from, that, right is right, wrong is wrong. That, if you did something wrong, you play auntie or your uncle or you play grandma or grandpa would whoop your behind and then tell your mama so you can get 2 more whippings when you got back home. That's the village that I was raised in. That
Okay.
I
there's
wish more
more
were,
out.
but I don't know if that's
And
what we're dealing with now.
say that again.
I wish more were, but I don't know. There's, I think you are more and more rare.
Yeah, and that's why I've come to recognize that for the men that have defended Diddy, I'm just like, somebody were to do this to your daughter, would you have the same energy?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And people get pissed when I ask that question, but I'm just like, I'm not wishing that upon your daughter. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
don't wish that on anybody. But you
right.
do have to ask that
Exactly.
question.
Exactly. At this point, we have to be able to take it there in order for the magnitude to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
But most of my male friends, they understand that it's wrong. I mean, if there was any male friend that defended, I'm like, we good. There's no other conversation.
Right.
I think for me, from it's definitely looking at it from, legal hat off, from the cultural standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
especially being of a generation that literally actively lived through, because I was like middle school,
Mm-hmm.
the true rise of hip hop, to like from its infancy, and I mean infancy as in, we know that it existed in the 70s and stuff, but I'm talking about when it actually when it was on the radio. Sugar Hill Gang, 45 Records, all of those.
But it was much
All
more positive and stuff then. That was
exactly.
different.
And so we watched the rise of it. I was in college or in my early 20s during the BET After Dark years, in the mid to late 90s, and all of that, and then continued to watch what went on. I say all that to say that in being because of watching and actively growing through the evolution of hip hop to become the behemoth that it has become, what what I was expecting, and it just so happened to culminate in the Diddy case, although you saw it coming a little bit with some of the Russell Simmons allegations. There was a long overdue reckoning for hip hop, a hip hop Me Too, if you will, that
Mm-hmm.
was long overdue, that me and many of my peers had
Mm-hmm.
talked about for years. I've even said, I remember years ago on my own podcast, that sooner or later,
Mm-hmm.
Me Too was going to have to come through the hip hop community, and when it did, it would be long suffering to get for it to actually get a grip.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be very interesting to see how it played out, and what I thought is exactly what is happening culturally, because the difference between what you're dealing with in the hip with a reckoning in hip hop versus in the acting world, in the business world, or whatever, is you are dealing with a difference in culture, and largely people who look like us,
Mm-hmm.
whose first instinct, male and female, because the misogyny and misogynoir runs very deep.
Yeah.
Because for us as a people, it comes from a place that actually has nothing to do with hip hop. It is a cultural thing that runs deep in us, actually coming from our main cultural base, which was the Black church. So you have all of this that runs very deep and continues to pervade. So it makes something like a reckoning that needs to occur in an industry that is largely the face of it anyway, not the money, but the face of it being largely us, it makes it harder to take hold because you have a community whose first instinct is to protect, whose first instinct is to say they're out to get us. It's a conspiracy. It's this, it's that. It's because he wanted to buy NBC. It's because he wanted to do whatever. And so it makes it harder to get to the meat of the issues because you have to wade through all the other stuff of conspiracies and whatever, when it really is about like this protective instinct, even though it's kind of a toxic protection. But this was a long overdue reckoning that just happened to explode in this case. But because of that background, it makes it harder for our community to come to terms with it.
Latrice, what are you hearing? Because you're born and raised in New York.
Yep, born and raised in Brooklyn, live in Queens, call New York home most, if not all, of my life.
Right.
Well, there's a couple of things I want to say. Like hindsight's 2020, and the signs were always there. Like one of the things I was talking about with my brother. Like I don't know if you remember when Cassie had shaved the side of her head, and that never made any sense to me. And I always wondered, like, why did she do that to herself? Because again, I didn't know it was an abusive relationship, but I was like, that never. And I'm thinking, okay, if a woman wants to shave the side of her head, she has the right to do it. But I think it was the timing. It was just like a combination of factors that, for me, that never sat right with me. And then when I read that, he yanked her hair, I was like, okay, that would make sense. It's like, okay. And another thing is, I remember reading how Diddy signed her to a 10-album deal.
When she was 19.
Yes. That never sat right with me as well, because most record deals are like 3 albums. Because you got to prove yourself. They're not going to invest in you that kind of money continuously. And if you think about it, very few artists get to make 10 albums, whether it's a Mary J. Blige or a Beyonce. And no disrespect to Cassie. No disrespect. But she was not that kind of artist.
No.
She was not that kind of artist. So it's like, when I read that,
the one album was based on her looks, let alone 10.
She has pretty.
But when I read that 10-album deal, to me, I just thought that was economic control. And that's the thing about abuse. Abuse doesn't always have to be physical. Having started my career in family court, I would encounter guys all the time who say, I never put my hand on her. And okay, that may very well be true. But if you're calling her 20, 30 times a day, leaving voicemails, if you're showing up at her house or her job unannounced and uninvited, that could be considered stalking. That could be considered harassment in terms of controlling her money. Okay, if you sign her to a 10-record deal, she's not just your girlfriend, she's now an employee.
Yes. And she was 19, people. She was
that too. But like, again, there were all these red flags. And it's like, wait, it didn't sit right with me. But it's like, again, I didn't know that he was abusing her at the time. And it's like, and when I saw the video at the hotel, again, all the dots just connected. Yeah. So basically what I'm hearing is most people, they think he's guilty. They're just going to wait and see the trial run its course and have the process play itself out. But most people I've encountered and talked to about the trial, they think he's guilty of sin.
Well, anybody disagree about the RICO? Anybody commenting negatively about that, or that they're just saying, okay, this is just domestic violence and it's not RICO? Are you hearing any of that in New York?
I've seen that chatter on social media, but not face to face.
Okay.
Now, Braylon, you brought up a great point earlier when you were talking about the making the band stuff. And that was one of the first things I thought about when everything started going down. I was like, so did people just forget what we saw on Making the Band? Stuff that's, by the way, interesting how we all know that despite the shenanigans that they let go on Rock of Love and whatever. Now that had to do with just, goofy sexual antics and whatever. But they would have never let him treat a bunch of white kids like that. Let's call that what it is. Viacom would not have allowed him to treat a bunch of white kids like that and be on the air. Now that's an aside, because that unfortunately is part of
the
stuff
culture mess
that helps with the culture mess. Because when we look at it, we're like, we know that to be true, so that feeds into this is just because he's black, and it because there is certain stuff that is allowed to go on one way because we're black, but another way no.
Right.
So it's like, what's okay and what's not. So it was okay for us to watch a bunch of young black kids who didn't have nothing but a dream be encouraged to brawl weekly, you know, and be tortured walking, miles and all of that kind of stuff. It was okay for us to see that, but now it's real interesting. But I'm glad that you brought up making the band, and from my understanding, either Choppa or Q are supposed to testify. Both of them have spoken out a lot.
I keep hearing Q. It might be both. I don't know. What do you?
Q used to be a member of 112, and just to piggyback on the
day 26.
Oh, day 12. Okay, I stand corrected. But I remember the bit that the footage of when they walked to Brooklyn. I remember thinking to myself, why don't they just take the train? Or why don't they just
because that's what he wanted.
Yeah, but again, things just is like, I'm from Brooklyn. I'm like, why not just take the train? Or okay, if y'all don't have cab money, then maybe just one of y'all go. Why do all of y'all have again? I get what you're saying, but it was like, even then, it was like the math ain't math, and why would you have somebody walk all the way to Brooklyn for cheesecake? It just.
I heard the cheesecake was allegedly for Beyonce. Is that true?
That's what who said that? One of them said that's who it was for, but apparently she didn't know that he made them do that. But that's who it was allegedly for.
Yeah,
but I'd heard that.
Yeah, I've heard that several times. Have you heard that, Braylon?
Yes, I have heard that. And also too, I'm wondering about Diageo. I'm wondering about Revolt. Those were two big brands with ties to Diddy. Also too, something that I covered on Brainley's virtual tour live. As everybody knows, Essence Fest is coming up. And it's coming up July 4th. Now, I bring this up for a very particular reason. If you remember the O.J. Simpson trial, when Oprah was on, she actually, did what we did. She broadcasted the verdict. And I said this on Virtual Tour Live, and it didn't click for me until I read the press release. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a very interesting Essence Fest, because y'all know court ends every day at 3:00. So the first day of Essence Fest on July 4th, when the judge wants the trial to end, it's going to be the first day of Essence Fest. So you can imagine.
It's over by then.
Well, I mean, it'll be over by then, but that first day, as you're going to the evening concert series at the Superdome and the after parties and the restaurants, that will be the main dominant conversation for that first night of the weekend at Essence Fest. So it's a very cultural event that's happening.
Yeah, because you're right. Are we gonna run into Essence Fest now that you bring that up? They are predicting 8 weeks. What just ended was week 2, but week 2. Yeah,
the trial's supposed to go 6 to 8 weeks, so it could very well coincide with Essence Fest.
Because
it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Still has a ways to go in terms of witnesses. And we don't know what the defense is going to do.
Right.
I think the $1 million question is, and personally, I think the answer is no. I don't think Diddy's going to take the stand.
Not in a million years.
Are you kidding?
But then, hey, stranger things have happened.
That too.
I don't think, just because I don't think he's going to take the stand, I don't think it's in his interest to take the stand. But
it'd be suicide for him to take the stand on Cross Direct. Get good luck.
I honestly don't know what there is to gain from him taking the stand, really the best, because as far as the assault behavior, it is what it is. You can attack the video all you want to, but it is what it is. And in roundabout ways, he's more or less, or on his behalf, his team has more or less admitted to abusive behavior. And that did in some way happen. They just maneuver around how and why it happened. So the only thing to me to be gained from him taking a stand, and I don't know if you need him for it, would be to try to undercut the stuff that feeds into the RICO. Quite frankly, if his attorneys do a good job, and he's got great attorneys, if they do a good job just crossing the prosecution's witnesses and perhaps putting on a few of their own, especially if there's any forensic evidence as it relates to the money, then that will deal with the RICO. So putting him on the stand would just set him up to be slapped around about being an abusive drug addict. That's not going to help anything. But like you said, stranger things have happened.
I mean, like I said, I don't see him taking a stand, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised by anything. I truly wouldn't.
So if he's found guilty, is he going to be locked up for life?
Well, he's in his early 50s now, and I think he's facing at like a minimum 15 years. So, I mean, best case scenario, he's going to die alone and broke.
Yeah, but I keep hearing that he's up for life in prison. I keep hearing that.
Well, because you have the drug charges, you have the sex trafficking, and you have the racketeering. So, like, again, assuming that he's convicted of everything, of all the charges, then yes, he'll likely face life in prison. But I think the minimum is 15 years. It's 15 years to life.
And I think they're just kind of saying that based on his age. Like, if you're 54, 55, and you get 20 years, that kind of feels like life.
Yeah, it is life.
Especially since with the feds, you do damn near all your time.
Yep.
Won't he get credit for the time he's already done, though? The 8 or whatever. The stuff?
Yeah. But if you're sentenced to, let's say he gets 25 to life. I mean, okay, yeah, he's getting credit for time now, but that's not much of a consolation, because that means you got 24 more years to go. And
go to Camp Cupcake or someplace like that, Jonda?
No, he's not. Well, I'll be fair. If he is convicted, because people get convicted of RICO offenses and certainly get Camp Cupcake, but a lot of times it depends on what those underlying charges are, because you got to prove certain underlying predicate offenses. So obviously, if the underlying offenses, let's say the underlying offenses for your RICO are purely financial crimes, then yes, you probably would end up with Camp Cupcake. But if the underlying offenses for your RICO are more serious or violent offenses, then it's a little, you can ask for it, but chances are you would be leaning, the best you could expect would be more like a medium security, as opposed to you being at Camp Cupcake where you're wearing the khaki pants and what have you. And then also the feds have to want to give you that, and more importantly, the judge has to want to give you that. And if they think you are a dirty, rotten piece of dirt, and again, that's where culture comes into play, because we know that there has been people who have been convicted of, had some ugly underlying offenses.
Yes.
But RICO was the only way they could get them, i.e. mobsters. And some of them were able to get nicer accommodations. Will that happen to a Black man in 2025 America with America that currently with a K as opposed to a C, and all the other things that are going on underneath it? I don't know if he's
But I
going to
think
be
another
that
thing to
lucky.
keep in mind is where he is sent. Like, will he be close to family or will they send him far away? Like, I think about the Unabomber. Like, when he was sentenced on federal charges, he was he pretty much exiled himself from his family anyway. But like, I believe Diddy has, connections to New York and LA.
Yeah.
They may put him in Kansas for all we know. We have to wait and see.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, the good thing with him is compared to some of these other people that may get put farther away from family is that his family is positioned to be able to, they may not be as rich as they were when he goes in, but there will be some money because folks have a way of knowing what to do with their money. There's a reason why he kept the house in Florida. Florida has very, very generous homestead laws. That's why OJ went to Florida, because then they weren't able to touch his retirement and his home. So he's been rich for a long time and long enough to know what to do and to make sure that his kids are properly taken care of. So unlike us regular folks, if he gets put in Timbuktu in jail, at least his people will be able to see him.
Okay.
Well, but then you have to keep in mind the civil lawsuits that are pending assuming that this trial runs its course 6 to 8 weeks, whether he's found guilty or not guilty, he's still got a slew of civil cases pending. So he's going to be bled dry or nearly dry one way or the other. So yeah, he's not going to be destitute, but he definitely won't have the money flowing like he did 10, 20 years ago. Those days are over for him. Those days are gone.
The white parties are over.
Yeah. Braylon.
Yes.
I always have to ask you some questions. Make sure that you stay in the loop. What did you think about those guns that they found that the serial numbers were shaved off and all that kind of stuff? What'd you think?
I'm not surprised by that. There was 2 shows called Power Empire that said the quiet part out loud about many things. Especially Cookie coming out of jail after 17 years probably won't happen for Diddy, but just saying. When it comes to this,
maybe not to a thriving record company.
Exactly. But no, I wasn't surprised by that. I think I look at it like this: if he would do that, there's other things he could do. When the raid happened in, I think because it happened in Miami and LA.
Yeah.
Next week, the LA police department and fire department will be on the stand. He was pacing back and forth on an airplane tarmac while his kids were arrested, right? So I'm not surprised by any of it. I think that in the words of Optimus Prime, there's more than meets the eye. And it's eventually Decepticons got defeated.
And what about little homie, his homeboy, the former college basketball player, the young white man that had the drugs and the money?
Right. What happened to him? He get his mule. They called him his mule.
Right.
Remember, wasn't he at the airport with him?
Yes.
So,
right?
yes.
Am I mistaken that?
No, you got it right. The mule. They got him and he got a deal, but we ain't heard nothing else about it.
Because he got a deal and now he got to be somewhere protected until it's time for his testimony if they feel they need it. But that's why we haven't heard from him, because that young man is got to be protected. His life is in danger. I think, quite frankly, a lot of folks' life is in danger. People think that what is it? Witness number, what is it, 3 or 5? The Gina person.
I think it was witness 3, if I'm not mistaken.
It was witness 3.
Yeah, I think people think that she is they're like, oh, she turned on the feds. No, she backed down with Diddy or whatever. I think that people underestimate the power of coercion and fear and witness intimidation. It is a real thing. And in situations like this, it's real because some of these people, especially the young women, and as we are finding out, men as well,
Yes.
have dealt with his wrath or the wrath of the people that he hired. So these things are not just threats to them, they are real. Kid
Real.
Cudi is a prime example of finding out that Diddy wasn't just talking about it, he made things happen. So if you are a person who has received them hands or something else, then the threat is real.
Mm.
And you're gonna move accordingly.
Yeah.
That's something
And
that
if you're told, I'm sorry, Braylon.
No. Finish your point. Go finish your point. I'll go after you.
No, I was just saying, if you're told, open your mouth and see what happens, you already know what happens because you've been knocked around before.
Right.
What were you going to say, Braylon?
No, that was something I was thinking about with the jurors, because one of the members of Diddy Dirty Money got called 54 times in one day, and so those witnesses need to be under protection, because it's one thing for Diddy to go after them.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing when a family is in trial or a family's on trial, because the sons and the daughters, they might get feelings about the jury, and they might dig into the jury's family members and friends and everything else. But I think the government has to have that jury under lock and key for protection, because I mean, if
I was shocked by that.
I mean, just because they sequester, just because
no, they're not. That's why I'm shocked.
They're not. They're not under.
And that was
no. I agree with you 100%. They should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason why I said that was because if you're one of the family members and this jury is determining the rise or demise of your uncle, you're going to feel a way about it. And sometimes some people don't have faculties to handle their own mental health that might come out in other outlets.
Right.
You know, I appreciate the judge for recognizing the jurors' humanity. If anybody is thinking that these jurors are not taking notes for Hopper Collins or anybody to come after them after this trial is over, you must be out your ever-loving mind. If you do not think somebody, because listen, there's no video that can be taken. Right. But there is a thing called voice record. Let me just go home, log it. Then, hey, ABC News. Yeah, you know, I got audio. Yeah, you're gonna have to put it on Hulu though, because you can't put this on TV. Well, why can't we put it on TV? I wasn't even supposed to record it in the federal case because it's a law that I can't do. But on streaming, there's no FCC regulation. If you don't think that's not happening,
I think there's reporters doing it.
And also keep in mind, in federal courthouses, you have to check your phones when you go into the courthouse. Like I work in a state courthouse, so yeah, you can carry your phone with you. You're not supposed to use it in the courtroom, obviously, and the court officers and as clerks, we tell litigants that all the time. You can't use your cell phone in the courtroom, but in a federal courthouse, you have to check your phone in with security when you're downstairs.
Right.
But some media is allowed to use it to have their phones in the courtroom, and we know that because Inner City Press as well as AP. Now AP is doing it in like little summary paragraph form, but the man from Inner City Press is doing the Lord's work. He's tweeting in real time.
What? Who is it now?
It's Inner City Press. He's on Twitter.
Inner City Press.
Yes, in fact, and you all probably know this. Literally during the day, if you watch Fox or any of the rest, and they have a thing running, everybody is following him. So legacy media is literally using his tweets, and he is tweeting in real time. AUSA says, Cassie says, blah, blah, blah. And you just follow him on Twitter, and he just goes in real time all the way down the page all day long.
So he's like a daggone stenographer.
Basically, yes. And he will tell you, I took a break because, in fact, this person is so into it that he has filed. He's one of, because you know how there's been moments in the case where there has been things that have been filed, but they haven't been public. He is one of the reporters who has filed letters with the court saying, hey, such and such was filed. We know it's filed because we see it in the system, but it wasn't released, and the judge will have to release it because these things are supposed to be public. AP has done it.
Are you referring to motions?
Everybody's yes. They allow it in the form of letters because it's easier than motions. Because we see even the attorneys will have been filing letters as opposed to forms. Yes, I'm telling you, look at his page.
Matthew
he does it every day, and he just goes all the way down.
Yeah.
He does several. He's done several cases, but this one he's done it. I started following him with I think he might have did R. Kelly as well, but he definitely did this one. Well, he definitely does this one daily. Yeah, so everybody follows him.
He's on point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Woo. And he'll tell you, I went to the restroom, I missed blah 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 blah, and he just keeps going all the way, all day long.
Wow.
Yeah, but anyway, some of the things, back to what Braylon said with the recording, I don't doubt that there are people who from legacy media who are allowed to take their phones in, that some of them are recording. It's just too tempting not to. Just to make sure, especially if it's like the good witnesses. There's no way that people aren't recording it. Or plus, buying the transcripts every day is expensive.
Devices like pins and stuff like that, because there's so many little devices.
Even the Meta glasses.
Right?
Exactly. I mean, hey, I got a pair of them free from an event, although they're shades, so they be like, lady, take the shades off in court. But I'm sure they got them in regular glasses, right?
Yes.
And all you do is you do like this to the side of the glass, and they just record, and it records right to your phone or whatever device.
Yeah,
because it's an app.
Yeah. Wow.
But it is a lot. What's going on? It's very interesting. This definitely concerns me. Looking at how I'm interested in the fallout from this.
Well, you know what? One thing that's for sure, and two things for certain, with the current administration that we have, if there's anything corrupt or whatever, they'll approve it. Because it's like, with the worse, the more corrupt, the better. More corruption, if it's the wrong thing to do, they'll approve it.
I have a question. Do we think if he's convicted, because this has come up a number of times,
will he bend the knee for Trump?
Trump will pardon him?
At this point, nothing would surprise me. I thought about it as well. Would he bend the knee for Trump? I mean, I imagine if bending the knee means he doesn't have to serve any prison time other than what he's already doing, I wouldn't put it past him.
And they partied together in the past, in New York.
And he's called him his friend, that he's a good guy and all of that. But I'm going to tell you something. It would be his brand, because he was with Epstein and Diddy and all that, and all these people are sexual deviants and what have you. So,
there was there's a man named Carlos Watson.
Yes, Ozzy Media. Oh, you in my wheelhouse now. I think he was convicted of fraud. Yes. And he was facing 10 years, and he just got pardoned by Trump earlier this year. I think he bent the knee. How far down he went, who knows?
Clearly, as Carlos Watson was on his way into jail, he learned that he got pardoned. But then again, Carlos Watson didn't do what P. Diddy did, though.
What did Carlos do?
Carlos Watson was convicted of fraud. Like, and here's the crazy thing, because I followed Ozzy Media and I went to Ozzy Fest, and so when it imploded the way it did, like it was like wow, because I don't want to say I was on the inside, but again, I was I followed them and I knew about what they were doing and the work they weren't doing anyway. But he had one of his business partners impersonate a Google executive because they were seeking funding, and he got caught. And initially, Carlos watching just brushed it off as, oh, it's not a big deal. It's kind of like, well, no, it is a big deal. And that is what led to the fraud accusations and they, being exposed. And Ozzy just went the way of the dustbin. And it sucks too, because Carlos, he had ties to legacy media. He was on CNN. He was on MSNBC. Whether or not he bit off more than he could chew or he flew too close to the sun, we'll never know. But oh man, that story's in my wheelhouse, Braylon. So thank you for mentioning him.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I just didn't know who the name was behind it.
And
yeah, he used to be on MSNBC and CNN.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just a lot of folks that he has pardoned, like
Eric Adams.
And the second time. And so it would not be surprising. I know that these charges, we talk about the sexual acts and all of that, but if you really think about it, because of what he is charged with, the excuse could be, as far as Trump's people is concerned, I think she got knocked. She may have knocked herself out accidentally. The truth, the excuse could be, well, he didn't get convicted of hurting her physically. He didn't get convicted of some of these more deviant things. Those were just things that were brought up, but what he was actually convicted of was racketeering. So that could be the excuse. You know what I'm saying? To say, well, we're not pardoning someone who is, who's convicted of, the assault and all of that, because that's not what he was convicted of. That would be a good excuse for his people in trying to work on his pardon, and even if Trump was questioned about it, but he doesn't care if anybody questions him about anything. I think we're thinking of him in a logical sense that doesn't exist when it comes to his power.
He's not normal. Nothing is normal. But listen, guys, we went over. We're like at 9:13, and I have enjoyed our conversation. I appreciate you all. Braylon, I certainly appreciated you.
No problem.
You guys, we done good job. And I hope that, and listen, there weren't that many questions. I think people are just listening. So I appreciate you, and let's just wave everybody off.
See you next time.
See you soon, everybody.
Good night. Be safe.
Good night. Be safe.
Good night.
We got a way to go.